Back here in the tech polo, we've known each other now for about 10 years. We had decided, started on a whim. I just emailed him. Sometimes when you email people and you invite them to your class, you don't know what you're going to get. Does that make sense? So I kind of did it as a leap of faith and hoped that it would continue to do it, or that it would either blow up in my face and I'd never do it again. Fair enough? Right? So it worked out really well. We've been good friends for a very long time. Probably because he's a tech fan. Here is a number of the books he has written.
He wrote them?
He wrote all of these.
That is a lot of books.
Yeah. Yeah. For some of you, you've never even looked at many of these, at this many books. Right? Eric? No, I'm just kidding. No, but he is a local author. He has wrote a bunch. There's all kinds of different things. Here's one that most people talk about. This is the Graham Mansion. Right? You ever heard of the Haunted Mansion in Graham's Forge?
Yeah, I
Right?
can. That's right.
Yep. And they have a big event there every year, and he sells tons of these. He was on. He was one of the people that helped produce. What's that show called?
I was a consultant on ghost hunters.
Consultant on Ghost Hunters, right? Which is a show on like a reality show.
Sci-fi.
Sci-fi, right? So they actually came and got Tom and asked his advice, which I'm sure was interesting. They have Henry County, Patrick County. Many people have asked him to help them write books. As you can see here, it goes to Graham Mansion. Here is, and I was just asking him what was selling now, because he is constantly selling books. Of course, right? Andy Griffith, right? He goes to Mount Airy a lot. He's even wrote a book on Ararat, so James, Ararat lives. Right? He has also wrote a book on the new one. This is his new book on the Dinky Railroad, which is the railroad that came from here to Mount Airy, right, through Ararat. So a lot of it, we were just talking about railroads yesterday and how they left, and so did the jobs, right, that went with them. So all you gotta do is pay attention, guys. You can ask him questions as you go or at the end or whatever, but he's just gonna talk to you about Patrick County Civil War. Be a really good thing. He is considered pretty much the expert on Jeb Stuart in all things, right? I'll give you a great example. I was taking a Civil War class. I had to write a huge paper in a master's class. Very big deal. Guy was an author, like a national known author, right? Much like trying to, impress Tom if he was your teacher, right? And so I said, look, I'm going to write a paper on Stoneman's Raid, and I need a lot of help because I'm going to write about when he came through Patrick County, right? And when he came through Martinsville. So I show up at the Bassett Historical Center, and they just say, here, Mr. Perry said you were coming. And they handed me this huge folder of information, and I printed it all off and took it back, did all my research, and got an A, and looked like a really, really smart kid, right? And it's good to know people, right? So worked out well. He's also a cancer survivor, 2 years, prostate cancer, which is kind of crazy, right? You don't want to. So we're fortunate that he's here, but all you gotta do is pay attention, guys, and we'll let him get started. Did you get your lights? No. Good deal, right? You can hit the board, it works. You're in good shape today.
Yeah. Until I break it.
Right. All right.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm pleased to be here for the 10th time, maybe. We don't know how long.
Probably, yeah, about 10 years.
I don't know how long.
He was here last semester too, so yeah.
I usually do this about twice a year. So it's very informal. The object here is that you to learn about Patrick County and the Civil War. And we're going to talk about some things. Oh, thank you, my son. Thank you.
Yep.
We're going to talk about some things that really aren't very pretty. This is war. We're going to talk about slavery. We're going to talk about some of the men who served in the war, some of the things that happened in this war. We're in the middle of the 150th sesquicentennial. I can't hardly say that myself. 150 years commemorating the war. And this is my book about Patrick County and the war, which I still think is probably my best book.
Yes.
Written years and years ago. And got some of my buddies on the cover there fighting at the birthplace. Jay Sheeler and Butch Marshall, and some of them on the cover of that book there. So what do you do, just tap it right here?
Yeah, should work.
Or down here probably. There we go. So 25 years ago, I got this crazy idea that we ought to try to save Jeff Stewart's birthplace, and we're going to talk a little bit about Jeff Stewart today and the history surrounding him. This is the original newspaper article in the Winston-Salem Journal about preserving Jeff Stewart's birthplace. So, believe it or not, I went to Patrick County High School too, graduated in 1979. 1979 would have been the year John Travolta was staying alive, Glenn.
Oh, nice. I don't even know who Travolta is. You know who Travolta is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel a little dated right there.
Yeah. You want to do a little disco for us?
No.
I went to Virginia Tech, and I have a website that you can all go up and look at if you're interested in any of this stuff. But the fellow here on the left is William Dennis Vine. And he was in the 51st Virginia Infantry and fought in the Civil War, the war between the states, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to talk a little bit about him. But that's him in 1913 at the Gettysburg Reunion, where all the North and South soldiers came together to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the war. I went to Virginia Tech, and this is my professor up there, James L. Robertson. Dr. Robertson's very short, so he got up in a chair one day to have his picture made with me. And he cussed me that night, Glenn, believe it or not.
Nice.
Yeah.
He's an interesting fellow.
But this is what he always says, that you can't understand what this country is if you don't understand the Civil War. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be sitting right here if it wasn't for the fact he used to tell us that you need to go out into the schools and talk to the kids about this.
He, anybody know what PBS is? Yeah. Okay. Dr. Robertson's probably been on PBS more than PBS has been on PBS. Okay? Like any Civil War thing, like they do a lot of local history, a lot of stuff in history. And he is constantly on that, giving his opinion of the war, right? And his analysis. He is considered probably, if Civil War was a religion, he would probably be a theologian. Does that make sense? Like he is that good. And I had a chance to meet him one time as well. So for him to be good friends with Tom says a lot. So.
He actually is an Episcopal minister. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, he's Episcopal. Anyway, why is it important to study the Civil War? Well, you can turn on the news almost any given day, and what will they be talking about? They'll be talking about states' rights. They'll be talking about, does Obamacare, can states not do Obamacare because they don't want to? We're still talking about states' rights. Civil rights. We'll talk about today a little bit about how the war ended slavery, but it took another 100 years before schools in this county were integrated. Believe it or not, the first time anybody ever drew Santa Claus was during the Civil War in the New York newspaper. Before the Civil War, all teachers were men.
Now they rarely are. Y'all notice that?
Most teachers today are women because there were no men to be teachers. They were all out fighting, so women took over teaching.
That's why there's no due training. And we have serious issues. Was that out loud?
Oh, that's terrible.
Good thing you have me.
As Charles Barkley would say, it's terrible.
Terrible. That's right. Yeah, Charles Barkley.
I don't know about y'all. I was really tore up this past weekend. I caught myself doing something, Glenn, I never thought I'd ever do.
Was you rooting for Kentucky?
I was rooting for Virginia.
Oh, gosh.
I was pulling for UVA.
Yeah, I was too.
It was almost too much for me.
Yeah, I was silent.
But I'm a jinx, so every team I pulled for lost.
Right.
Every single team I root for seemed to lose in this tournament. The Civil War is known by a lot of things. A lot of you probably hear war between the states. My 82-year-old mother calls it the War of Northern Aggression because she's from Georgia. They all hate George William Sherman. But these are just some of the names that this war goes by. Abraham Lincoln called it the War of the Rebellion. If you ever see the official reports of this war, they're in great old big thick books. And it's the War of the Rebellion, not the Civil War.
By volume, right? It's like volume 1, 2, 3,
128.
Yeah.
So, here's a little rundown. We're going to talk about soldiers for a few minutes. There were 1.2 million Confederates, give or take, Virginia had 214,000, and believe it or not, Patrick County had 1,700 men fought for the Confederacy during the war. Here's some of the other states. Now, 1,700 men is a lot, and we'll get to that. Like I said, we're in the 150th sesquicentennial of the war. There's all sorts of websites you can go and look at. Here's one about Virginia. Virginia's probably doing the best job in each state talking about this, and you can go up and look at that. I'm always hesitant to click on images because I'll go to the website. There's a Civil War trail system, goes all over Virginia. This is their website. The Jim Stuart birthplace is on the Civil War trails. There's a Civil War trail sign out there. So, Patrick County in 1860, there's 9,000 people in this county. I think today we're at 19,000. So
We're actually less.
Less than
what we
that.
thought in 2006, yeah.
So, of that, there were 2,200 black people, there were 2,000 slaves, and there were 140 what they call free people of color, who were African Americans who weren't slaves. They were free people living in this county. But here's the thing, there's 3,500 white males, and those in 1860, the only people who can vote are the white men. Nobody else can vote. Women don't vote until 1920. And African Americans don't really get to vote until way up into the 1950s and 60s in the South. Now, 3,500 white men, 1,700 are soldiers. Half the male population are soldiers. Now think about that. You guys, half of you are in the Army. Of those half of you, 25% of you, a quarter of you, are going to die. Another 20% are going to get wounded. So half of the men who go off to fight either die or are wounded. Now think about that for a minute. Half of you in this room go off to fight, and of that, half of you either come back or don't come back, horribly wounded. So the election of 1860, there are 4 men running for president. And here they are. Some of them you've probably never heard of. I hope you've heard of at least one of them, for Glenn's in trouble.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, John Bell is going to win Patrick County. The guy you've absolutely, I assume, never heard of. And he beats John Breckinridge by 2 votes to win Patrick County in the election of 1860. Abraham Lincoln wasn't even on the ballot in this county.
I told a little bit about this. Tell us a little bit about John Bell.
John Bell was a Southern Democrat. What happened was the Democratic Party split. And Stephen Douglas became the Northern Democrat, and John Bell became the Southern Democrat. And so a good bit of the South went for Breckinridge or for Bell. And John Breckinridge, believe it or not, had been a vice president of the United States at one time. Well, it would end up being a Confederate general. John Bell, this is the last time anybody ever heard of John Bell. He disappears from history almost after this. But he is, you know, the man who Patrick County has voted for. Because Abraham Lincoln is elected, the 9 southern states, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, are going to leave the Union. They're going to secede. They are out of the Union. On April the 12th, 1861, they fire on Fort Sumter, which is a United States military base out in the middle of Charleston Harbor. If you've ever been to Charleston, you can go out there on the boat and tour Fort Sumter. Before then, Virginia is still in the Union. In April, Abraham Lincoln calls for troops to put down the rebellion. He always called it the rebellion. The governor of Virginia politely tells the president, or not very politely, tells the president of the United States that he can stick it where the sun don't shine. We are not sending men to fight our fellow Southerners. And Virginia has a secession convention. And the delegates vote 85 to 55 to go out of the Union. A lot of times you don't realize this. People voted to go out of the Union. This wasn't the people leaving. This was everybody got a vote on this. And Patrick County went almost 700 to 161 to go out of the United States. Imagine holding an election to go out of the United States.
I was telling them, that's very similar to what's happening today in the Ukraine,
Yeah.
and that they voted for secession, didn't they?
Yes, I think they voted for secession though with Russian guns pointing at them, which is a little
Right.
different. Which is a little different situation.
Right. Which is very similar to what happens, I guess, to our 161 that voted to not.
Yeah, who knows? Who
Right.
knows? Who knows? In 1861, Patrick County men are going to start fighting in this war in some places you've probably never heard of, Sewell Mountain and Carfax Ferry up in West Virginia. Here are the two presidents. This is Abraham Lincoln, of course, and this is Jefferson Davis, who's the president of the Confederate States of America. And these are the two leaders of these two countries. The Confederate States is going to grow with Virginia, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas all joining. Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, and Delaware. Delaware was a slave state in 1860. You don't think about Delaware being a slave state, but it was. Stayed in the Union. So 4 southern states don't go out, but the rest of them do. Believe it or not, in Patrick County, during the Civil War, we printed our own money. Virginia would let us, each county print its own money. Here's some Patrick County notes, we call them. They're actually very pretty. They're 3-color, and they're still around. You can buy these. If you ever see one at a flea market or something, buy it, because the thing is worth a fortune these days. But they actually printed these down in Greensboro. Patrick County notes.
What was the note on the back? I told them the other day there's a note on the back.
Well, paper then was so short that they would print, they wouldn't waste paper. So they print the money on the back of something else. So you might get an old handbill or newspaper or who knows what might be on the back of one of these things. You just don't ever know. But that's actually Patrick County money. During the war, there's a lot of shortages. Food, salt. You gotta have salt. Any of you guys hunt? I bet a bunch of you hunt. You gotta have salt to take care of your meat. If you don't have salt, you starve. You gotta have salt to make gunpowder. So salt is very important. And if there's shortages of it, you're in trouble. Now, I don't wanna bore you to tears with this, but you can go into the Patrick County Courthouse. We've never had a fire in this county at the courthouse, so everything's still there. You can read about everybody in this county. And one of the things you can read about is they're concerned about 2 things: food, salt, and taking care of the families of the soldiers. And the Patrick County supervisors apparently got along better then than they do now. This is all they're talking about. They send people off to get salt, they send people off to get corn, and wheat, and all sorts of things. And they're very concerned about taking care of the men's families who are fighting in this war, because the women are left at home. And the men are not here, there's nobody to grow the crops, the women have to go out and do it themselves. And so the county's very concerned about this. Just to show you, we printed our own money. Well, what happens when you print your own money? Inflation will happen. In 1861, you could get a pound of coffee for $1.30. In 1865, it was $200 for a pound of coffee. Starbucks would have loved that, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Oh, what I paid yesterday.
Yeah. During 1862, epidemic hit Patrick County, diphtheria they called it. We had 145 children die in this county in 1 year. But there's only 9,000 people in this county. 145 children could be almost like a whole class at Patrick County High School probably disappeared.
Right now, it'd be like if you lost like,
The whole junior class.
maybe, yeah. We usually have about 200 each class. Y'all know that? We have about 200 each class. So imagine losing, 75% of them.
Gone.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
The other thing you have is Patrick County is such a rugged place. You've been in Rockcastle Gorge, maybe some of you, there's the places you can hide up in there and you'll never be found. We have a lot of deserters from both armies. We have a lot of criminals who will come in and raid your home because everybody is hungry. And, when you get to a point where you've got to survive, you'll do all kinds of things.
You don't hear often sometimes, I hear this sometimes in Medicine or something, but like a summer home will be broke into, right? Someone's stuff will be taken, right? I mean, we hear about stuff like that, right? They steal whatever, do whatever. Well, they didn't have summer homes back then, people didn't, right? But those people that lived on the tops of those mountains,
and in those mountains happen all the time. So like one day you go out to feed the chickens and you're down 2 less chickens, right? And you're like, where'd they go? And that was your food